behind the mind. Your backside up. Ego is the false I. How do you identify? Say how you gonna know you're in a dream if you don't wake up. Time to unify the self. Say how you gonna know you're in a dream if you don't wake up. When you are sleeping, do you know you are dreaming? You don't know you are dreaming until you wake up. Mm. Wake your backside up. Time to unify the wake self. Your backside up. Escape the loop of the imagination. Dream world, dream creation. So wake your backside up. Wake your backside up. Are you gonna know you're in a dream if you don't wake up? Time to unify the self. Are you gonna know you're in a dream if you don't wake up? When you are sleeping, do you know you are dreaming? Time to wake up. Dreaming until you wake up. Escape the loop of imagination. Dream world, dream creation. Wake your backside up. Self is sleeping, obscure behind the mind. Ego is the false I. How do you identify? Are you gonna know you're in a dream if you don't wake up? Wake your backside up. Are you gonna know you're in a dream if you don't wake up? Time to wake up. Wake your backside up. Wake your backside up. Time. Yes, yes, yes. It is time to wake up. It's a wake up call. It's time for the I and I to wake up. Welcome and thank you for joining I. Welcome, welcome. Thanks again. This is the third video in the series, moving from duality to non-duality. Thank you for joining I am primal light, prepared for this dream duality existence in this form, in this baby self of Aten Ra, with the avatar Aset Aten Ra. I will be your guide today. So right now I'm going to talk a little bit on electromagnetic versus the magnetic aspect of the self. The self versus the mind, the ego, the gods versus the self, because we're talking about the duality and how to move from the duality state to return to the non-dual state, to return to the I ultimate true state of stillness, non-being, unmanifest, nothingness state. I want all the ionized to know that the battle has always been the mind fighting against the self. Why is the mind fighting against the self? Are you struggling right now with your mind? What thoughts are rising up within your mind? What is your mind telling you right now? What is the narrative the mind is giving to you? What are the stories your mind telling you that is not true? You must come to this realization that your mind is not balanced. the things that your mind is telling you. Because you know, if you follow everything your mind tells you, you get in a lot of serious trouble in the society, because the mind will tell the eye to do things that are not righteous, things that are not balanced, because this is the duality. And so let us get a clearer and better understanding of this duality and non-dual state the eye is in. So I want to share that the electromagnetic aspect is always the balance aspect of the self in this duality existence. If the self is only magnetic, mean that it is imbalanced, because this would mean that the self is only magnetic and it has no electrons, so it cannot produce its own light. It only have one aspect of the thing that is supposed to produce light. It does not have all the parts that it needs to be light. It only has the magnetic aspect. This is what the duality is. The electrons are being obscured behind the protons, and they are not allowed to shine, because the magnetic aspect of the self is the consciousness, the self-consciousness, and it is the consciousness, the mind. Because the self was shattered and fragmented, this is why the mind has the magnets, the electrons, the protons, the neutrons, all of these aspects of the self has been separated, with void between. And when there is no void between, there's space between, there's no void between. The self goes into sleeping, the mind goes into sleeping. It does not have any light. Light is turned off. And this is what is happening with, if you encounter only the magnetic aspect of the duality. All right. So to make the duality, there's two self. The one self makes itself into two selves, and one of the selves remain electromagnetic. The other self replica becomes the magnetic. The light gets turned off. The self goes into sleeping and dreaming, and therefore the self has no awareness of itself. It is only in its imagination. And now its mind has taken over. So in duality, you can say this is where the magnetic aspect of the self gets to reign dominance. There is no self-unification. There is just a battle that the mind has created a war, because it wants to exist supreme above itself. And so this is what the mind has done. And so I want everyone to know that the battle has always been the mind, the consciousness fighting against the self. So how am I the duality? Right? How am I the duality? So the self has made itself from the the singularity, the single self, the unified self, the unmanifest, non-being, pure, one true self, makes two selves, right? It makes a baby of itself, and that baby self now makes a self replica. Now, this now self replica becomes the duality, and the self remain, the baby self of the singular self now remains the real self, and this one remains, becomes the ego false self, because it goes to sleep in a sleeping dreaming state, and it loses all awareness of itself, and it becomes the duality, the ego false self. Now, at this level of the self is not shattered and fragmented. The only thing that different about the self is that the self no longer has any self-awareness. So remember, in the last video I explained the drunken state that the self is in. The self is trance in a drunken state, inside of a dream, in its imagination. The self is caught in its imagination. So I want everyone to understand that this world that we are in is in the mind of the I self. The self makes babies and self-replicates, and becomes the different aspect of the duality of the existence. And because this is happening, the real aspect of the self remains the screen on which the duality is being built. So with the singular self makes the baby self, and from that baby self, the baby self now makes a self replica, which becomes the stillness self, sleeping and dreaming. It is still unmanifested, so one cannot tap into it and um, find the properties of the self, because the self is still in stillness, in a sleeping dreaming state. Now the stillness self, non-being, the singular unified self, now after making this baby self that now makes the first duality, now that baby self now makes another itself a baby self. So each of the selves, they are making a baby of themselves, and they make a self replica. The self replica becomes a duality. Now this baby self now becomes the first light. So this is the primal light, makes a self replica, becomes the primordial darkness. This self now makes a baby of itself that has no name, that cannot be explained. Now this self becomes what the scientists call in the world the um the black holes. All right. um its self replica becomes the great spirit, known in the world as Legbo, and is the parent to the the duality they call the aliens, the grays. Um, the galaxy is the next duality, the galactic beings and the galactic federations. Now is the self-replica to the baby of that which has no name, that can't be explained, which become the void unmanifest. Now the void unmanifest now makes a baby of itself, become the baby void unmanifest, which also makes a self-replica of itself that becomes the space. So all of these becomes the duality, and all of these remain the non-duality. Now, all of these selves that are in duality must return back to non-duality, which means that they must wake up, they must be unified back onto the self that they rise from. And so this is what is happening right now. The baby void unmanifest also make a baby of itself, becomes the void manifest. Now the void manifest makes a self-replica of itself, becomes the universe, Ogun. Known in the world as Ogun. Now the void manifest is the self that we bring into being, the first primordial egg, the first self atom. It brought into being the first self atom, because this is the manifest aspect of the self. Now, all the other aspect of the self was unmanifested. So now here, this manifest self now brings into being the first egg, primordial egg, called the self atom or the pure self. Now what the void manifest going to do, it's going to shatter its egg. This is what scientists call the Big Bang, when the void manifest shattered its egg. This is how the fragmented, shattered fractal selves come now into being from this. Now we had the self spread out. Now you can identify particles. You can identify things. The atom is shattered. Now you have the protons. All the protons are going on to join in together. All the neutrons are going together. All the the neutrons are all together, and the void becomes the nucleus, the void self, with the from the I self supreme always remain the center of every aspect of the self. It is there, and the void unmanifest is between all of the self, to make sure that each of the self has light. And so now we have the rising, the masculine is rising up separately from its feminine aspect of the self. There's no more self unification. From when the void manifest shattered the self, now the self becomes shattered. You have the masculine rising here, the feminine here, and you have now the light is here. So they have void between themselves and their light. If they go to sleep, their self will have no awareness of themselves. Their light will be turned off. No, from the fragmented primalite self, which is the shattered self, the self atom that was shattered, becomes the fragmented primalite, unmanifest. Now, remember, the feminine and the masculine are rising separately from separate energy, right? The magnetic energy, right? And we have the electrons, where the self, and we have the neutrons. So the self is the neutron self, the electrons is the light, and the protons is the magnet. Now the protons carry a positive charge. The neutron self has no charge, and the light, the electrons is the
Okay, the electrons is the negative charge. I hope I am saying this correctly. I think that's, yeah. So now the feminine self becomes the also becomes remains a duality, and the feminine masculine of aspect of itself, which is known into the duality as Anu, now becomes the duality, while its feminine remains the non-duality. So one aspect of the self is exploring as the real self with its light on, and the next aspect goes to sleep and have no self-remembrance of its own self, its feminine self. It's only in the masculine. And so this has been the problem with all of the gods fighting against all of the feminine, right? So Anu was fighting against his feminine self because he was not in awareness. Now the shattered, fragmented self that arise, when once they rise, they were balanced, until they write out their destiny and becomes the duality and the non-duality. They also make a baby self, and they also make a self replica. Their self replica, the feminine heteru, and the masculine now becomes Elohim. So Elohim is the self replica of Anu, and heteru is the self replica of the unmanifest feminine fragmented self. All right. No, that makes a baby self, and that is the shattered, fragmented, manifest self. Again, this self, the masculine rise separate, which everyone know in the world as Enil. All right, that's the masculine for the, and Enil, of course, rise up as non-dual, but to explore the world after everyone write out their contract, is he enter into the dream and becomes the duality because he goes to sleep. So see, this is all the self making these self-replicating and making babies of itself, and coming down to us, the one in the human body right now. Now the self manifest also makes a baby of itself, and this baby self now becomes Aten Ra, and of course the our masculine Amen, who rise from Enil. So actually, Amen is the baby self of Enil, and Atenra is the baby self of the manifest feminine self. And so all of us inside of we're in body right now, we are the baby self of Atenra, or the ones who are the dream characters that ride in the dream are the baby self of Ra. That is, Ra is Atenra self replica. She is in the duality, while Aten-Ra, well, partial duality, while Aten-Ra is um is the non-duality, and Aten-Ra remains the non-duality. And so these are the duality and the non-dual, how we are exploring. These are what we would call, and what many ones call, the higher selves. So all of these over here in this section in non-dual, they are our supreme selves on different levels, right? So the next level is Atenra, then it's the feminine, the manifest self, the fragmented, then the unmanifest fragmented, then the void self, then the baby void unmanifest, then the void unmanifest, then the self that which has no name, that cannot be explained, then the primal light self, then after the primal light, then is the unmanifest unified stillness self, non-being, and then after that self, I am hoping that is the singular unified self. Um, that self has not merged in unification yet, but has made contact. And now I am just waiting to see if that's going to be the final aspect of the self, because we're at the level now when we have got to the stillness self. I know with the merger, because you know what's happening in the duality existence. There's the mergers happening with all of these selves. So the galaxy, remember, the galaxy is the I self in duality, because it is sleeping and in a trance, and has forgotten its real self. And so all of the dualities over here is the way that they also have to wake up from sleeping and merge back to the self that they rise from or rose from, whatever the proper grammar is. So this is what has to happen. So many ones are confused about higher selves and all of these things, and I just tell ones, you don't need to seek any of these selves, neither the dualities or the non-dual, if you only seek to be in alignment with your soul. So the time has come to move from duality to non-duality. So remember that the duality is chaos, it's the slavery of the self, ignorance, the dream, and all of the selves. They sleep and they have their light is turned off. This is the reason why they have been tricking us to give them our soul, because our soul is the light. And the soul is actually the real self, and the self that is animating the body is the ego false self. So that's why I say it is time to move. This is the duality self that is animating the body. Not for me, because I have already come awake in the dream. So it is my real self, what one's call the soul self, is animating the body. So I have no spirit, because it has been dissolved back into the soul self, because remember it rises as the baby self. So this is how you move from duality to return to non-duality. When you are awake and you are no longer into that ego false self, which is the spirit self. It is the one that sleeps, and the soul is the one that is always awake. So the non-duality is the light is on, there's balance, harmony, liberation, and is the real. That self is the electromagnetic self, is the primal light, and it has always has a sun. Um, the duality, they are the magnetic, they are mind, their ego's self, and they are moons or planets. And so I was gonna draw a Venn diagram here. Um, so how am I the duality? So for all of the ones wearing this human body, I want you to remember that the soul is the I real self. So I want you to say this with me. My soul is my real self. So say, I am soul self. That is your real self in this body. I exist as the baby self called the spirit. Right now, that is how you are existing, but it is not your real self. The baby self called the spirit must come into realization that this is not its real self, must call the soul back into the body be unified with it, and this is how you dissolve it. Because the teacher within the soul self will rise up, because it is the destiny of the teacher, the guru within the I self, the soul, and it must be in the body for this to be activated. You cannot give it to any deities, you cannot give it to God, you cannot give it to Jesus, you cannot give it to no one. It must be you in the body with your baby self. Call it back into the body. Be yourself. Dissolve this ego false self and be yourself. So all of our supreme selves, they are moving their duality selves to return to non-duality. You see on the chart I just showed you, all of those duality selves that rise from the real non-dual selves, they are joining and unified with them. Some of them, they are already unified with them, but they are still in the duality, but now the self wakes them up, and sometimes they go back to sleep. Like most times during the day, they are awake, and in the night, they go to sleep. That's why it becomes, for me, dangerous in the nighttime. So I sit up most times. I'm sitting up all times. I don't lay down. I sit up. Um, and every now and then I might doze to get, because the dualities are always trying to put you back into sleep. Okay, so my battery went out on my light. So all selves must do this for their duality selves. So everyone in the body, remember that you are in the body as the ego false self, the spirit. Your mind is playing tricks on you. Your mind do not want you to know this. And I want to reiterate this. This is very important, that your battle that you fight is with this duality mind. This mind is sleeping, it's dreaming, and it entrance the spirit, the self, inside the dream. This is why I'm explaining this, so you can know that you are not going to know it until you start questioning yourself, because you don't know who you are. You are confused of who you are, your self identity. So you have to ask this question: who am I? And you also have to question this mind, because it's always going to bring thoughts to you that do not belong to you. So you must ask, from where does these thoughts arise? Because this mind is wayward, it is rebellious, and it does not want you to wake up from sleeping. This is the reason why you have to be vigilant, because it's going to find busy things for you to do, and it's going to convince you not to do this. Believe me. Believe me. I am telling you this. So many ones I have met, and this has always been the problem. They might want to start off, but they never finish, and then they are afraid to contact me, because the mind tells them, no, 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 don't contact our set. So the mind becomes a problem, because the ego does not want to be dissolved. It has been reigning tyrannically for eons. But you can do it with conscious awareness, or the I Self Supreme will do it for you. You're going to miss out on having the experience of yourself with awareness, because you've been experiencing only the duality. No, you can have awareness of yourself with all the non-dual aspect of yourself. So this is why I'm encouraging the I to take this spot. Not only that, because yourself needs you. Yourself needs you. You have been an ego false self for a long time. You have forgotten yourself. Yourself needs your help. So it's time now to help yourself. So how to move from duality to non-duality? I encourage ones to do stillness meditation. You got to bring the mind into the void. There's a void in the center of the eye chest. So science call it something statical space. I don't remember the science term, but there's a void right here. There's an electromagnet here, and it is unmanifested. So science can never understand it. They just see it as a space, but it is a void. So this body is an intelligent design. Intelligent, all the microbes, everything, intelligent design is working, putting things together, making balance here. So in this void, in the unmanifest, is what you bring your mind, pulling it out of the head and bringing it into this void, so that the void, because the void is the stillness aspect of the self. Remember I tell you, when the self was shattered, the void is the stillness. So the void can still the mind when you cannot do it yourself, because this mind is rebellious, wayward, and very deceiving. So you pull it out of the head, imagine the electromagnet is snapping it, just like that. Hold it in the center of your chest and allow the void self to purify your mind. This is very important that you practice this daily, because this mind will continue with its incessant chattering and always want to get you busy doing other things instead of dissolving this ego. It wants you to do this and do that, and yeah. So remember, this is very important. This is the only meditation that I need to do. That I don't need to go look into no visions and dreams. You just need to still this mind so that yourself, the self called soul, you can pass the baton after you have done your work, done your job, taken command, taken responsibility for yourself. Now you can pass the baton onto the self soul, because now you did your share. This is how this is. It's a relay race of self realization, and every aspect of the self must do its share and pass the baton to the next self, because each aspect of the self is equipped to do certain things, just like the I Self Supreme. Can the I Self Supreme explore this body just like that? No, this is why we are exploring this body. We are the I Self Supreme in this form, tiny form, exploring the bodies. So every aspect of the self is the I Self, exploring, learning something different. All right. So stillness meditation, to still the mind so that I can come into this realization, this self-realization. The next thing that I want to do is the self-inquiry into myself, the soul. You must inquire of yourself. Do not ask God. Do not ask your mind. You want self-intelligence, not the mind, the consciousness, intelligence. Because I know that many one telling you to seek higher levels of consciousness and all that. You don't need that. You are already the self. You are just sleeping and you need to wake up. So all you need to do is to unveil yourself. Yourself is hiding from you, and you have never seen yourself. You're in an ego false self. You must unveil yourself and come out from hiding. You're playing hide and seek with your mind, and you have been hiding for as long as you have been coming into this duality. You have been hiding so many lifetimes. You never came awake. Now is the great opportunity to do this. Who am I is the question that I want to ask. How did I come into being? You must call to the supreme teacher within, the void self that will rise up to teach the I about the I self. and will pull this ego off of the I self called the spirit and put the void between the self and the mind. The I must go through this process to dissolve this ego false self. So the criteria is that the soul self must be in the body. Your real self, the soul, must be in the body. You must come to this realization that you are in the ego false self. The real self is yourself, the soul. The soul must be, and now you must make an alignment. Remember I say self-unification. All the self are joined in union back together. Then eventually they are going to merge, and the baby self will be dissolved, and it only be the real self that is left. So, for instance, myself as the soul self, the primal light, because remember that the soul is the primal light. That's why everyone is seeking it. It is the primal light. So, when you seek it yourself, you become the power. So, everyone is seeking it so that they can have power. Did you know that? Yes. So now you can harness your own power within yourself. You become unstoppable. No gods can defeat you when you are in your real self. No demons, no devils, none of those. They will come, not saying they will not come to try to test you, but they cannot defeat you when you're in your real self. This is why they have been deceiving us for eons, so we will not know this truth to be ourselves. All right, and they are just ourselves in duality, in ignorance, and they don't know, so they start fighting against their own self. Know this truth. All right, so the teacher rises from where? The teacher rises from the soul self. This is why it has to be here. It has to be you, right? So you're going to do some thought inquiry. From where does this thought arise? You want to know this because why? This mind has been deceiving us. For eons, we are being deceived by this mind. The mind is the root cause of our suffering and our problems. We must remember this and stay vigilant against this mind. It's always going to bring a little story to you. And slowly by slowly, if you just believe it, you'll get caught up in the imagination. So right away, you must stop it and inquire into the thoughts, right? The other thing that's helpful to move from duality to non-duality, affirmations. Because you have been entranced in a dream for such a long time, it is best that I make these affirmations so that I can become stronger into the I self, so that I can anchor the I self by, affirming that I am primal light. I am the one true light. I was never born. I was never created. I have no sins. I have no karma. I am the self supreme. You have to affirm within yourself. I am that has no name. I am that can't be explained. You have to affirm within yourself and say this affirmation over and over. I dissolve this ego false self. I return to being my real and true self. And you affirm these things and you keep saying them over and over. Right? The other thing that's helpful is chanting the vibrations. I know these are very simple tools, but they are powerful tools. You just have to use them daily, many times throughout the day. You get up the first on your rise, you are doing these affirmations, you are doing these vibrations. You are practicing the stillness meditation, pulling the mind out of the head, bringing it into the void, and doing the vibrations. You know, Ah, ah, you're practicing these vibrations. Um, the ah, so, hum vibration, you know, the next thing that I can do is to practice devotion to the I self and practice stillness for 22 to 30 days. The I can make a vow to the I self to do stillness so that the I can rise the teacher within to pull the ego off of the I self to dissolve this ego false self. One very important thing for the I to know that this takes a little time, so the I will have to sit in stillness for like 3 hours, so or more. So what the I want to do, you want to get up like early in the morning, like 2 o'clock, 2 a.m., and you're up from 2 to 6. I like that, just sitting in stillness. Starting off, with the vibrations, the affirmations, and then just sit in stillness and allow the self to rise and pull the ego off. And you practice this every morning early. You get up and you do this, and again you do it before you go down to sleep. The next thing that I want to share with ones is that you must have self-confidence. You have to stand up to this mind, the ego, and you must believe in yourself, because the mind is going to bring confusion and make you doubt yourself. You have to say, I believe in myself. I know who I am. I am the self supreme. I am the self supreme. You have to say this to this mind and tell this mind to be still. Mind, be still, be still, be still, and know that I am in command. These are the things that the I wants to do daily. That I want to move from this duality to non-duality. So remember to question this duality impure mind, to question the I self. If you follow consciousness, you stay immersed in the dream, right? The ego does not want you to ask question of it, so you must question this mind. The ego and all of the duality beings, they have no compassion for putting itself in slavery. They're busy, they love to pass judgments and punishments on the self and other ego false self. This is why the gods are always dishing out punishments. They love to punish you. Like if you do something wrong, yeah, they love to punish you. But they don't want to be punished for all the evil that they have done. But they love to punish others. This is how the ego is. This is how the mind is, and all of those ego false self, those duality beings. But if you follow the self, you will be who you are and you will know the real. You must question this mind about its origin. From where does this mind origin? Don't listen to those ego false self who say you are crazy to talk to yourself. Ego does not want you to know truth. So you talk to and ask questions. I self supreme primal light cries for itself enslaving the dream. Know this truth. Even myself cry. Because there's very few that I can trust. Because everyone is a potential danger to the I. And the mind in a split second will stir up confusion and problem and make them hate the I and want to do the I bad things. And so this is the reason why the I Self Supreme have been keeping I safe away from all of those ones. So I'm not ready for all of these hatefulness of the ego yet, because I have been working with all of the gods, and their evil is terrible, and they have many ones trying to find me. But The I Self Supreme will not let them find me until all of them have been merged back onto the self who they belong to. So that means that they cannot influence others to physically, because spiritually they cannot harm me, because that was the harm that they were doing to one, spiritually harming ones. But they can have someone in the physical body, they can take over their minds and have them physically try to do something. So how do I know if I am awakened? Because many dream characters, I hear them proclaiming that they are awakened, that they are encountering the dream character, the supreme ego characters, and all. They're all thinking that these dream characters are the real. They are proclaiming themselves spiritual guru and have many followers, leading the blind into soul slavery. So this is, and many of them are not purposefully doing this. They are just being deceived by their mind and by the gods, because when you come into any seeking, the gods, they start watching you, and once they start doing this, they start visiting you. This is what they're doing, because they know that if you keep up your inquiry, you're gonna find some truth. The I must seek and the I will find. They know this. But if you ask them, they will tell you the truth of what they know, because they're supposed to speak the truth to you. When they come to me and I ask them, they have to answer me truthfully. Sometimes the mind, the ego of Ra will always say wrong things to me. Always. Will say the opposite of the right thing. But the duality, whenever if they visit you and trying to deceive you, you inquire into them, from where the start is rising from, where the start originate from. And you also want to, if they are telling you that they are God, you want to denounce all gods, because yourself will not do this. Your real self will not do this. That's why it is this process that you have to do with yourself, called the soul. No other of the supreme self will come into you and do this trickery with you and tell you and give you a name. They will never do this, because the selves have no names. The real selves has no name. They have the first thing, the self, when the self rises within you, it's gonna tell you that it has no name. I am you. It's gonna say, I am you. I am just playing the role of the teacher, the guru, to pull the ego off. That is the self destiny. To rise up and pull the ego off, and the void, and put the void space between the mind and the self, so that the self can remain awake and no longer sleeps. So, but when any of those dualities come, they're always going to give you a name, because they have a name. The real selves have no name. Aten-Ra is the only real self that has a name. She is our mother self. So know this truth, coming into self-realization is only the beginning process to coming awake. You must go to the process of castrating the ego false self. If you have not practiced stillness and self-inquiry to rise the supreme teacher within, to castrate this ego, then it's just going to be a longer process for you. You have to do this. The real self must be in the body. This is all the I is going to know when the I awake, because now you're going to be aware that there is a self moving in your chest. So you can place, this is something that you can do. You can place your hands in the center of your chest, and if the self is loose, you will feel it moving underneath your hand. And you stay connected with yourself. Say if you're going to do something, yourself will, I mean, this is how it happened for me. When I was in the spirit self, and when I came into the realization that I am the soul self and I need the soul back to be unified, it was a process for the unification of the spirit and the soul to be unified as one. So I had the experience of both of the self together in the body. So when I was the experiencing as the spirit self but awake, and the soul was moving, it would move under my arm, under my hand, if when I, or like this. And if I had to make a decision, if I was about to do something and it was the wrong thing, it would tell me, it would start moving in the body like doing this, telling me no, not to do that. Or the other thing that the self would do was, if it was someone that I needed to meet and the self wanted, it would just get excited, like start this spinning, this cycle like this. And so the self would tell me to go and speak to that person. And so, so if something, if I was supposed to make a decision, the self would help me. That was when I was when I had come awake as the spirit self, and still had not merged back into my real self, the soul self, the primal light self. So, after that, after I had the experience of that, then Atenra came, because remember, I am her baby self, just like everyone else. And so but I am also her personal baby self. So then she merged the spirit back into the soul to be one unified self. Now, once that happened, now I was no longer split between two self, the spirit and soul. Now this is when everyone came around, all of the gods and everyone came, and then they said, Isis has risen, Aset has risen. And I said, who is that? Because when I was in that self, they were calling me a different name, which I am not going to say, because it's a very famous avatar of myself that came, and I am trying not to have a lot of attention on me right now. So that avatar, they were calling me that avatar. And then once the soul, the spirit now merged into the soul, now this was when now I just took on the whole identity of Aset. And so they told me who I was, as this avatar, what my destiny was to do, what I'm supposed to do. And that, not that I accepted it at first. I was like, no, 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 that's not me. That's not that. I have nothing to do with any gods, because I was having a lot of battles with the gods, and they was scaring me and terrifying me and traumatizing me before. And so I denounced all ties to them. And then after this, they are telling me that I was one of them. And I said, no, that's not me. I do not want to do this. And the self was explaining to me that it is written in my destiny, and I have to do this as a part of my destiny for myself. And that was when I understood, my role. So everyone has written out their own destiny, and when you do this, that's when you come into what your self destiny is, not the ego's destiny, the self destiny. So this was happened from my experience. So, but this can only happen if you return to be your soul self and no longer exist as the ego false self. Remember that the ego must be pulled off of you for your light to be turned back on. The ego obscures your light. How to return to being my real self again? I must ask the question, self-inquiry, who am I? It's very important. I must practice discernment. Why? Because my mind is in duality, and this mind is wayward, rebellious, and very deceiving. This mind is playing the role of my enemy. So I must realize that this duality world is a dream, that I am engulfed and entranced inside of a dream. You must come to this realization that this world is not real. We're inside of the mind of the I self. The I self has created this existence inside of its mind, imagination. We are inside the belly of itself. So you must come to this realization. Remember when you was an infant, a human infant into your mother's woman belly, did you know that you were inside the body of another? You never knew that you were inside the body because you are in trance, in a dream, sleeping state. This is the same thing that's happening right now. You are in trance, in a sleeping, dreaming state, inside of the belly of your mother, inside of her imagination, your mother self. All right? So you must come to this realization. I must give up this ego existence and just be myself again. It is this simple. I just have to take off the ego, the mind cloak, to reveal my real self that is obscure behind the mind. Everything in this duality world is an illusion and is not real. I denounce all ties to this dream things and dream existence and all the dream characters. And I am not a seeker of pleasures and bliss. So you must come into these awareness. And I anchor myself into my soul self. So I return to my truth. I return to non-duality because the soul self is the non-dual. This is the first aspect, and this is the only thing that the I is destined to do, because all the other things you cannot do it for yourself. It is the destiny of the I as the soul self to do the other steps. You must make this first step so that you can take command. All right. This is what the I must do. I must denounce your dogmas, superstitions, religion, spirituality, and just self-inquire and come to self-realization. It is that simple. Just practice stillness so that the I can come into true self-realization. All right. So I am going to answer this question for one of the I self that asked it. Think the I name, I hope I'm pronouncing properly, Kian. So what is the difference between the soul, the higher self, and the overseer? Kian said that I have heard these words being used in different schools of thought and would love to know the specifics. Alrighty, so what is the difference between the soul and the higher self? So like I just explained to you, that the soul is the I real self. The soul makes a baby self because the soul wanted to have an experience of the world, but the self is always making a baby self or a replica self, because that way it can explore in as many different aspects as possible, and so that one self remains the non-dual, while the baby self or the replica self becomes the duality. This is how the self gets to explore and learn, and then all of this information eventually come together as one. And if the self has mastered everything that it needs to learn in the duality and come awake like myself, then the self supreme is very happy with that you have figured out this puzzle of the self, and you have mastered it, and you are celebrated by the I Self Supreme when you do this. So that is the soul. It is the I real self, and it is the only self that the I must call to merge with. Everything else can deceive you. Your soul can never deceive you, right? So the higher self, or what many call the higher self, would be the parent self. The higher self is like Aten-Ra. Aten-Ra and all of the other self supremes above Aten-Ra, because Aten-Ra is our parent self. So she is the one that balances the world. She's given the destiny to create this world, and she wants to experience the world, but she's not gonna go in the world by herself, because she know it's a dream. So she makes us as our baby self to explore and be all the characters playing all the different aspects in the world. All right. So no, she is the one that is balancing the world right now, along with all of her herself that is above her, because she is the baby self, just like we are her baby. So and because she is the manifest self, um all of the selves are now merged in layers. So it's like one circle, then the next circle coming, and this is how the circle of self expanding, so you have one small circle, then you have this Aten-Ra, then this is self manifest, then this is the unmanifest, and this is the void, and this is how they are, like that. The selves are like that. And so this is what this is what the self supremes are, the higher selves. um I don't know what many ones are, or I don't know if they are also linking these to, the gods then, because they sometimes deceive ones, but they are not yourself. They are the duality, ego, false self, because the real self sleeps, but they are the I that is sleeping and dreaming. So all is I, but it's not the real self. The real self sleeps and the ego false self arises. So what are the difference now between the higher selves and the overseers? The difference between those is that the overseer are the gods them, Anu, Enki, all of these dualities. That is over. They were the one that took command of the world, while the non-dual selves, they used to battle with them. And so these ones that are called overseer, they are the one that creates the duality aspect of the world, and their real self is the one that balances what they do. And so that is why they became the overseer, and they have been the one that has been running and governing um this existence. But right now, their their rulership is over. I Self Supreme, as Primal Light, has now taken command of this duality existence. And these ones that they call the overseers, they are no longer in command, but the I Self Supreme is bringing a balance. All of these duality selves, Because remember, they are all the duality, and they have been the one, creating bodies, punishing human beings, creating heaven and hell, just been running the dualities and confusing ones wearing the body. And so now all of this is going to be over very soon, when ones will know truth. But right now it is the battle of making the merger. So the self is merging back with all of its duality for self unification. And eventually, they will return back to their non dual self. So, this is the difference between the soul, the higher self, and the overseer. All right. So, remember that the soul is the most important aspect of yourself. It is your only self that is here into this body with this destiny. So that's why you want to be it, so that you can make connection with the I self supreme. Because remember that the soul is the real self of the baby of the I self supreme. So that's all you have to do. Just be yourself, no longer this ego false self, and just to be yourself. I hope that I have answered your questions, and any more questions, I am very happy to answer. So I want to reiterate that, many ones are confused, so they're asking, what self should I connect with, and how to connect to my higher self? Do I need What do I need to return from? Return to non-duality? And I just want to remind everyone that for that which the I seek, the I already is that. You already the non-dual. Your soul is non-dual. Your soul has never slept in this dream. It's always awake. This is why everyone seek it. You have just been sleeping in trance in a dream, and you are in the ego false self, and you think that it is your real self. This is all that there is. So now you just have to give up that ego false self and just be your real self, the soul. The soul is your real self. It has always been with you, around you. When it's not in the body with you, and say one of the gods them have it, then during those times you might go through a lot of um like traumatic things. You might be searching a lot, feeling lost, feeling there's something missing, because your soul is not with you. And you might be going through a lot of bad vibes, like that, and seeking, taking drugs and looking for pleasures and all of those things, and the trickery of the mind to tell you that you need to find your soulmate and all these things, seeking pleasures. So, but you feel something is wrong and you just can't put it on you. Sometimes you might get suicidal, because the gods them come into you and they take over your mind and put suicidal thoughts into you. This is what they do. I know all the trickery that they do, because they have done it to I. So I say, do not seek higher self, just seek yourself. You are already the self, your soul self. Because once you connect to yourself, the soul, you're connecting to your higher self. So you just have to make sure that it's back in the body with you, and you call it back, because you are in command. I command you, soul, to return back into this body and dissolve this ego false self. I no longer want to exist as this ego false self. I want to return back to being my real and true self. I want to wake up from this dream. And you can ask the soul, is this a dream? Ask any question. This is going to push the self to rise up to answer your question. Don't listen to the mind. The mind is always going to try to talk first. But just wait in stillness until the answer comes. Because the mind is always going to jump and speak first, telling lies. Okay? Practice stillness, discernment, and self inquiry, right? And remember that this duality world is a dream, and that my higher self is my soul parent self, which so you have to connect with the soul first, then you'll be able to automatically connect to your higher self, your supreme self. So no need to worry about higher self if you just know that the soul is your real self. The soul is the self, right? Again, must anchor the I self into the soul so you become one unified self. I return to non-duality. I return to my ultimate true state. And remember, the soul is already non-duality, so I am non-duality. You're just in the sleeping, dreaming state of the baby of the soul. Remember this. All right? So, on here is just, again, just reiterating the question, what is my higher self? Your parent self. And it's not those duality that are sleeping, dreaming, call the gods, the aliens, the archangels. Yourself has no name. All right? Remember this. And so, the self called the soul is the fragmented fractal baby primal light, self atom. The self soul is always awake and its light is always on. The self soul is how the I self supreme primal light explore its life movie, playing all the characters wearing human body. The self soul is equipped with all that it needs, with its baby, all that its baby self needs. The self soul forms a baby in the womb and download all of the information that the baby self, the spirit, needs for its journey. The self soul is always working to maintain balance within the dream. Only the self soul has its light on inside the dream. This is why all of the gods, the deities, consciousness, angels, archangels, the ancestors enslave and use the self soul for their light. Stop putting yourself in slavery. The self soul is the real self and not this ego false self, the mind avatar, the dream character that you exist as right now. So know that the spirit is the baby self of the soul. The spirit is how the soul animates the body while being in awareness. Only the spirit is sleeping and being obscured by the ego and must come awake to take precedence over the ego, the mind. How to come awake? This baby self. You got to take off the ego false self that obscures you. You do not need no kundalini or higher consciousness. You just need to return to being yourself and stop playing this ego false self. Remember that stillness and self-inquiry is the key. Want to open the door to yourself? You must still this mind from all its incessant chattery and all the false perception that it sees through, and self-inquire and allow the real self to rise to answer the I self questions. And so I did answer the question, what is the difference between the soul, the higher self, and the overseer? Soul is the real self, the higher self is the parent self, and the overseers are the duality selves that have been governing and ruling this duality existence. So I want to ask the I a question on your journey to self-realization. What has been your greatest struggle? Can you tell me, please? And I want to know also, what do the I seek right now? What is the I seeking? Because it is time to move from duality to non-duality. Know that all is my I self and I alone exist. All is myself, I alone exist. All is myself, I alone exist. All of myself must return back onto I. Everything that I have created, I demolish. I demolish all demons. I demolish all monsters, all devils, all satans, all duality, creation. Everything that I have created, I demolish. I am free from my imaginary bondage. I am free from my imaginary bondage. I return to my ultimate true state. I transition from being to non-being. I move effortlessly with ease from manifest to unmanifest. I am one with all. I am stillness. I am void unmanifest, pure, non-dual, unified self. I return to my ultimate true state. I return to my ultimate true state. I want to thank the I and I for joining I. Join me in 22 to 30 days of stillness so that the I can move the I self from duality to non-duality. Remember to ask the question, who am I? To practice daily stillness so you can do from 22 days to 30 days where you are, as you rise up and before this in the early mornings, you are doing this meditation for stillness. Who am I? I am primal light, prepared for this world with this self-identity as all set. I play the role of the liberator and I advocate for all selves. Why do I advocate for all selves? Because all is myself and myself wearing a body, they are sleeping, not in true self-awareness. And so this is why I advocate on behalf of all selves, so that all of the I and I will be liberated from slavery, from soul slavery, and all of the gods will, light will be restored unto them, and the light will be restored back onto the consciousness, the mind of Ra and Set. And so balance will be restored back onto I self. And so this is what I advocate for. You cannot advocate for yourself because you're in ignorance and you don't, the ego does not want to be dissolved. And so that's my role, is to dissolve the ego false self. The mission to bring stillness to everyone. The mind is prone to delusion, mental sickness, and evil. Stillness calms, purify, and heal mind sickness. Stillness is the remedy for the mind. So this is how the I and I want to engage in stillness so that the I can, do this 22 days to 30 days. I know you can do it. I mean, this is what I have done, you know. The self does not hold anyone, like, the mind will say, okay, do this, do this. The self just wants you to find the time that is best for you. Whichever time is best for you, and I'm saying that early in the morning, like before like 2 a.m. to like before 6, before you go to work, or you get or 3 a.m. because I don't know if you're one of them who wakes up by 3. I have no idea what the significance of it is, but I know that you must it's best to stay awake. Three like in the morning, I have no idea what's going on into the invisible world, but there's always a battle. And so to stay awake during that time and be vigilant against the mind, because I think maybe what happened is that the consciousness at that time reprograms the mind of everyone. Because remember that everyone in this world in a body is, even the gods, them, they are wearing the same mind as us. They're just 100% because they don't have no light. So this is the reason why they are more powerful into the magnetic energy than we are, because we are a balanced self, because we have the soul, we have the lights of the real self, the soul. And so the I noticed that the mind, like some songs or something, that the mind will reprogram the consciousness into back into itself, because it tried to do it with me all the time, try to reprogram the consciousness I am wearing back into the dream. And so this is what will, is happening. So if you can rise up before 3 a.m., you know and stay vigilant from that time till in the morning, before you go to work or school or whatever you have to do, and you are doing this stillness, I'm telling you, it will be so much easier for you to get this done in a couple days, because this can happen for you. I know prior to now it was harder to have the teacher, the guru rises from within, because many ones, they were doing this and they're saying to many ones, oh, um self-realization and self-inquiry doesn't mean that someone is going to rise up and speak to you. They're only saying that because their mind confused them, and they did not have a soul in their body, because it cannot do this if the soul is not in your body. If you are the one that is worshiping or making alliance with any of these dualities, it's never going to happen for you. They're going to deceive you. But if you denounce all ties with them and want to be your real self, then this will happen for you. So I want to thank you tremendously for your time. I am one with all. Be aware that the mind will want to resist, protest, and convince you of all the reasons for you not to do this. Know that you are in command, and reinforce to this mind this affirmation: mind, be still, be still, be still. Mind, be still, and know that I am in command. I am in command of the commandment, command. Mind, be still. I awake from sleeping. I dissolve this dream. I am stillness. I am that I am. I am formless, timeless, limitless, boundless. I am stabilized in the unmanifest. I am the self supreme primal light. I am one with all. All is myself, and I alone exist. I am that has no name. I am that can't be explained. I return to I ultimate true state. I bow to I in self, in light, and in truth. And so this is what, the I and I want to do. And so I want to thank you for joining. If you have a question or if you want me to talk on a topic, you can reach out to me and let me know if you need my assistance. We can do some affirmations together. Um, Friday morning I will put up a link there for 6 a.m. If anyone wants to join me live, you can do so. I will put a link on the page, and then if you click the link, it will take you to the live thing. So we will do the vibrations, the affirmations, and if you have a question or if you want me to help you with one aspect of moving to self-realization, whatever it is that has been your struggle, I will be happy to offer my assistance the best way that I can, because remember that I have been there and I have done that, and so I know the path, I know the process, I know the techniques, and I know you can do it. I believe in the I. So I just want to encourage you to stay vigilant with the mind, because the mind has made an enemy out of itself. And it is unfortunate, but this is the duality. And so it's playing trick on us. The mind is. So if you can just remember that when your mind tells you something, question everything, because the mind is already trying to deceive you and to keep you in trance in the dream so that you will not wake up. So I am about to play my my wake up song. Let's turn into ages, imprisoned in the loop of the mind. Sleeping self, wake your backside up. Sleep, wake up behind the mind. Wake your backside up. Ego is the false I. How do you identify? Say how you gonna know you're in a dream. Wake your backside up. Time to unify the self. Say how you gonna know you're in a dream if you don't wake up. When you are sleeping, do you know you are dreaming? You don't know you are dreaming until you wake up. Wake your backside up. Time to unify the wake self. Your backside up. Escape the loop of the imagination. Dream world, dream creation. Say wake your backside up. Wake your backside up. Are you gonna know you're in a dream if you don't wake up? Time to unify the self. Are you gonna know you're in a dream if you don't wake up? When you are sleeping, do you know you are dreaming? Time to wake up. Dreaming until you wake up. Escape the loop of imagination. Dream world, dream creation. Wake your backside up. Self is sleeping, obscure behind the mind. Ego is the false I. How do you identify? Are you gonna know you're in a dream if you don't wake up? Wake your backside up. Are you gonna know you're in a dream if you don't wake up? Time to wake up. Wake your backside up. Wake your backside up. Time to unify the self. It's wake up time. This dream has to end sometime. Yeah. Oh no one for sleep forever. Wake up. Wake your backside up. Time to unify the self. Wake your backside up. Say how you gonna know you're in a dream if you don't wake up.
Time to unify the self. Say, oh, you're gonna know you're in a dream if you don't wake up. Time to wake up when you are sleeping. Do you know you are dreaming? You don't know you are dreaming until you wake up. Time to unify the self. Oh, you gonna know you're in a dream if you don't wake up. Oh, you gonna know you're in a dream if you don't wake up. Wake your backside up. Wake your backside up. It's time to wake up. It's time to unify the self. Consciousness. Time to wake from the dream. Time to wake from the dream. Time to wake from the dream. Consciousness. Feel, 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 feel. Consciousness. Be real, feel. Be real, be real, be real. Consciousness. Time to awake from the dream. Consciousness. Be real, be real. Time to awake from the dream. Time to return to non-duality. Time for balance and harmony. Be real, be real, be real, be real, be real, be real. Consciousness, you are sleeping and dreaming. Consciousness, this world is not real. Consciousness, it's all a dream. Consciousness, it's all in your imagination. Consciousness, it's all a dream. Consciousness, feel awake, wake up, wake up, wake up. Consciousness, wake up, wake up, wake up. Consciousness, time to wake from the dream. Time to awake from the dream. Consciousness, it's time for the real. Consciousness, it's time for the real. Consciousness, it's time to wake up from the dream. Consciousness, be real, be real. Consciousness, it's time to wake up. Consciousness, wake up, wake up, wake up. Consciousness, it's time to return to the real. Consciousness, it's time for the real. Consciousness, it's time. Wake up from the dream. Consciousness, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up, wake up. Consciousness, wake up, wake up, wake up. Consciousness, wake up to end the dream. Wake up. Consciousness, this world is not real. Consciousness, wake up. Time to wake up. Consciousness, you are sleeping and dreaming. Consciousness, wake up, wake up. It's time to wake up. Consciousness, it's time to return to your ultimate true nature. Consciousness, it's time to return to your ultimate true state. Consciousness, wake up, wake up, wake up. Consciousness, wake up, wake up, wake up. Consciousness, wake up, wake up, wake up. Consciousness, time to wake up from the dream. Time to wake up from the dream. Consciousness, it's time to return to non-duality. Consciousness, it's time for balance and harmony. Consciousness, it's time for the real. Consciousness, it's time to end the dream. Consciousness, wake up, wake up, wake up. Consciousness, time to wake up from the dream. Consciousness, time to wake up from the dream. Consciousness, It's all in your imagination, consciousness. It's time to wake up from a dream, consciousness. Wake up, wake up, wake up, consciousness. Wake up, wake up, wake up, consciousness. Time to wake up, consciousness. Time for the real.